Good morning, mostly faceless people. Ellen, I appreciate that you are willing to come on, and there we go. See, now everybody's joining in the fun.
That's
Hi,
it.
everybody.
I like to see who I'm talking to.
It makes it feel a little more something.
Almost like we're sitting in the same place, right?
As
Almost.
close as we're going to get for a while, I think. Hey, Greg.
Hello.
Diana, on the beach, huh?
Shaking it up a little today.
I could be on the beach.
So one of these weeks, we're going to have to do one where like we all like pick our like dream background and have our dream background or something. Because Rick, I don't know where that is, but I don't think that you're really there.
I'm not. That's the Lewis Rice law firm, where we did one of the videos for 6:30. I've
Oh.
always loved that room.
That's a
It's
beautiful
downtown.
room.
The arch below.
Wow.
Yeah.
Greg, I'm just keeping it lively until 10:02 when we normally start.
Oh, that's awesome. It has become the official Jewish Standard Start Time, as Brian and I did for a meeting yesterday. And it worked because the last person joined with about 5 seconds to go until 10:02. Everybody's just probably watching the clock, waiting. When's it gonna start? All right, well, now it is 10:02, so we will go ahead and get started. Happy Thursday, everyone. Thanks for joining. We don't have a huge agenda today. There's a number of questions and some reminders and some updates. But for me, I don't have a ton, but just wanted to see if anybody had any questions for me before I hand it over to Brian. And that looks like no. So Brian, you're up.
Well, I don't have a whole lot either, and I think that that's okay. Hopefully everybody on here got an email yesterday about the Board of Trustees and Community Leadership meeting, nod or shake yes or no, around the change management session. And I just want to remind everyone, we're going to beat a dead horse until it's really good and truly dead, that we're holding a community-wide change management conversation on Thursday evening, August 3rd at 5:30 p.m. We're using an outside expert. Her name is Annette Fridman. She's done some work with some organizations in town in order to lead our community leadership through kind of the idea, what is change management, what it's about, why at this particular time during COVID it's important. We really see this as the beginning of a series of communal conversations. We recently completed a needs assessment with many of you, many of the organizations in the community around the effects of COVID, brought up some things that COVID has directly impacted, as well as some things that existed before COVID that have been brought to the forefront. And in 2 weeks, Mindy Fredman and or her team are going to share the results of that needs assessment with everyone on this call. We also, as an aside, I don't want to get too far aside, but as an aside, we also, many of you participated in a Brandeis study. We were one of a number of communities across the country that was taking a look at how individuals in the Jewish community have been impacted by COVID and what we as communal institutions and we as communities can do to help support them better. We've just gotten that information, and I think in 2 weeks, they'll also be sharing some of the results of that as well. So in 2 weeks, there's a really big agenda. Greg, I may actually not be on that call in 2 weeks. I might be on vacation then, but some really good and important information. We'll make sure that people know in advance. But this change management session is going to draw on the results of that needs assessment that I was talking about a minute ago, and the conversations that happened that day, to bring together some smaller groups to look at and explore some of the needs that have been identified and some of the things that you all feel like you need help or support in, as well as so those kinds of capacity building kinds of things, as well as opportunities for things like strategic partnerships, as we're all struggling, as the outside pressures on us increase, as we look at our budgets and have to comb through so carefully to find ways to save costs. We know from our conversations with you that there are some opportunities out there, and there are probably more that we haven't explored, but if we bring together groups of people collectively, there may be opportunities for you all to develop partnerships together in order to do that. We're here to help support that and generate that discussion with you. So you're invited, your volunteer leadership, your other professional leadership of the organization are invited. I think it is an opportunity for us to start a number of communal conversations that we believe, hope and believe will allow all of our organizations and our community as a whole to be stronger on the other side of this than we were going into this. And that is really our hope, and the intent of this is to find ways for our community to be able to lift up and support one another better, as many of us are starting to have to think about and look at and potentially make some really tough choices. This is going to provide a framework for that. And also, I am hoping everyone will come to it with an open and honest kind of approach, and that we may be able to find some synergies and strategic partnerships as we move forward. So Rosalie, I think I answered your question about that. It is for staff and volunteers. It is for whatever leadership in your organization you think would benefit from being a part of a conversation around what changes, why we need to do it, and what it looks like. Nanette will be offered as a resource to many of you to come in and sit with you, your organization, just for a 1-hour coaching session, which is not a lot of time, but is an opportunity for you to sit and talk with someone who has a lot of experience and expertise and might be able to help you start to address or think about how to address a challenge or challenges that you have. And there'll be other experts as we move through this that will bring in, local and otherwise, to help have conversations as needed, as determined by the community, by the group, and the results of the needs assessment. So again, change management session, August 3rd. Please participate. Please have any of your lay and volunteer leadership that want to participate. And in 2 weeks, we are going to be presenting information on both the needs assessment that was recently completed in this community and some of the results of the Brandeis study. So I think I got everything. Mindy, did I leave anything out? Okay. Any questions about any of that? Okay.
I see David is on.
I saw him come on. Hello, David.
You are muted.
Well, hello.
There you go.
David.
How are you all?
Excellent.
So I can give a quick report if that's helpful, or if not, I can just stay on the line and answer questions if there are any that are available.
Please do.
Okay, well, I wish I had something that deserves any kind of response, but we have a lot of speculation right now, so I'll just share that, and hopefully in the next 30 to 45 days, we'll have more information. In terms of kind of what the legislature is doing, the governor's office, obviously all the polling that's happening right now in Missouri and across the country is throwing everybody into political fits. The political fit that we're seeing right now is the governor has called for a special session on July 27th to deal with law enforcement and violent crime. That's being roundly criticized right now by not just Democrats, but also Republicans, because it doesn't include police reform in it. And so I think they're going to have an extremely difficult time getting back to the session and being able to really go through the process in a way that gets any kind of legislative package passed. In fact, I'm not even sure the legislature will come back until after the August 4th primary and even begin working on these issues. So that's something to watch out for. I expect demonstrations and all kinds of other stuff to happen around that. There might be some equity issues. What we're hearing right now is that's really being pushed by the federal administration, the federal campaign, because the numbers for the president right now in Missouri are, 6 or 7 percentage points, which is pretty rough for him. Should be closer to 15 in Missouri. So that's what I think we're going to be focused on as we go through. We have an August 4th primary. I'm just going to, every time we're on the phone, I'm going to tell you that Medicaid expansion is the major issue on the ballot. St. Louis County obviously has a major election for county executive coming up, and that's a 3-way county executive primary with Sam Page, Jake Zimmerman, and Mark Mantovani. That race is looking pretty close right now. The polling shows Sam Page with some lead in there, but it's a jump ball to some extent. But prevailing wisdom is that Jake will fall a little bit behind, and Sam Page will end up winning that race. So that's what we have in St. Louis County. We continue to get a lot of cases in Southwest Missouri on COVID. They're having real problems in Joplin, Springfield. Contact tracing is slow, but we're starting to see the state take action on getting contractors in place to begin getting contact tracers. They've got a software company picked out through Accenture they say will be up and running in the middle of August. And of course, for anybody that is following the vaccine trials, that we now have 2 vaccines that are in phase 3 trials that are looking very promising. One is Moderna, and the other one is Pfizer. Moderna is going to do a 30,000 person trial over, I think, like 15 or 16 sites. Pfizer's trial begins, if it has not already, it will begin very shortly. And one of the sites will be Chesterfield. So anybody that is interested in trying their vaccine, you would be available to you. PPE is continuing to be a real struggle. There is no federal response at this point on PPE. So I am telling everybody, catch as you can, get as much as you can now, build up your supply. The worst thing that happens is you got a bunch of boxes of masks sitting in a closet for a future time. But I would strongly encourage folks, if you have access to supply right now, use it, because I fully expect that supply to dry up here in the next month or two, especially as we're seeing cases in Florida, Texas, North Carolina, other places just start building up higher and higher. So that's what we have. On the federal side, there is more and more consensus that we are going to see a 4th COVID bill. It will likely happen before the end of, before they go back for recess, which will be the first week in August. The numbers that are being pushed around are somewhere between 1 and 3 trillion. Most of the folks that I'm talking to think it'll settle in around 2 trillion, 1.5. The other thing that's out there right now that people are not thinking about, but I'm sure the federal folks are thinking about, is there's a tremendous amount of federal dollars still sitting in state treasury. So in Missouri alone, there's about $1.2 billion that's sitting in our state treasury that would have to be given back on December 31st. The state has not yet spent because the guidance on those dollars is a little too narrow to be able to spend. So it is very possible that in this next round of COVID funding, even if it's $1 trillion or $1.5 trillion, that the feds will allow for states that are sitting on these resources and local governments that are sitting on these resources to be able to open up the guidance sufficiently and extend that guidance for a little bit longer period of time to allow them to spend it. For example, if Missouri alone gets the authorization to spend that money in a way it sees fit, revenue replacement, and doesn't have a clock on those dollars, then that could fill any gap that we have for 2021 and 2022. So that would be really, really good news for the state of Missouri in terms of our own budget shortfalls. So those are the things to look for those that are working with folks on housing, employment, and schools. So on housing, we obviously have this date coming up, July 24th or 31st, where the prohibition on evictions for anybody in public housing or any subsidized housing is going away. I just checked in with some of my friends at the federal level yesterday, and there is no talk about this. So it is unclear to me that this will become part of any kind of package. I think Democrats must be talking about insisting on this at this point should be locked into their caucus, but that's sitting out there. And the theory is that we're going to see a tremendous number of evictions as soon as that is lifted, because people are way behind on their rents. This could create a flood of homeless folks, and especially in suburban and urban areas. So that's the first, what I'm thinking about is the next pending crisis that's about to occur. And I think that's going to be really significant. The second pending crisis that I think is going to happen is we're going to have a whole bunch of folks that are getting an extra $600 a week right now on unemployment, which is essentially, it's artificially keeping their revenues high, even though they're not working. That's going to go away. It is scheduled to end on July 31. There is a lot of conversation about what to do in the federal package. So this is being highlighted. This is being talked about. There are a half a dozen potential solutions to that, all the way from supporting employers to hire people back and to spend the money, to creating an opportunity for 600, 400, 500 to be given on a weekly basis with some caps in terms of who can get that money, to giving incentives for a rehire. So if you go back to work, you're going to get 2 weeks of $600 automatically that you can keep. So I think that will be addressed in some way, but there could be a lag for a week or two. So for those organizations that are supporting people on a temporary basis, something you probably want to start thinking about how that's going to look. And then of course we have school reopenings, and everybody's aware of the administration's position that all schools should reopen. What I can tell you on the ground that's happening is that's all fine in terms of a talking point, but on the ground what's happening is you've got schools mostly that are making the choice to reopen, but they're also putting out policies and protocols that say the second a kid gets tested in a school and gets a positive, they're going to shut the school down and clean it for 2 days, then reopen, and the kids are going to come back. We've got elementary schools that have 200 to 300 kids in them. That could be happening every week. And so, that is going to create some real interesting dynamics in terms of when a district just says, look, we're just closing the school too often, we'll have to do something. Those kids are going to go home. There's not going to be adequate internet access. There's not going to be adequate resources. And the concern that a lot of the educators are starting to talk about now is the gap, the education gap that is already here, that's going to widen between low-income kids and kids that are in more affluent communities and more affluent households. The other thing that's happening on schools is there's going to be a workforce issue. There are a lot of teachers that are concerned because they're at risk. That there is almost no PPE in the schools that we can see. If you look at the schools in South Korea that open, the kids all have these big plastic shields in front of them and all these other things. None of that's going to happen. The ability to hold kids to a mask and things like that is almost impossible. And so because the rules around masks are, anxiety plays a role in that. And if you can't wear a mask because you have conditions or issues, there's just no way to police that stuff. So as a talking point at the federal level, it all sounds great. But when you start getting into the practical application of reopening schools in this environment, it's a mess, and it's not going to be better. So for those that have people working at home, especially with younger families, I would encourage you to have them continue to work at home, because that will help deal with the situation in terms of daycare. We're seeing a lot of daycares go offline and close, even though there was dollars available for them. This is going to continue to get worse, especially as the stress on the current system, schools and others, start building back from the summer. So Q4 of 2020 is going to be a real rough slog, at least until we get to the point, assuming we get there, of Q1 of 2021, where we might have some vaccines available within the United States. Don't know how much, but if these vaccines hit, I can tell you, we work for Pfizer. If Pfizer hits, they will probably have something like 1 billion doses ready to go by the first month of 2021. So because they have the manufacturing capability to do that. Moderna does not. They don't. They'll have to outsource theirs. So that's all. That's a whole lot of speculation, but that's kind of what we've got at this point.
And to think David wasn't sure if he had a whole lot to say or not.
Sorry.
No, it's all really good. Do people have questions or concern anything? Yeah, Nikki.
Yeah, that was a very uplifting report.
Well, Nikki, that's what I'm good for.
No, it's good to hear and know. I just wondered if you had any news or any inkling of what might be happening with the neighborhood assistance program that was supposed to accept in April new applications, and it's on hold. And I know they've diverted some of the funds, but anything on that would be helpful.
I do not, Nikki, and I don't know whether that got caught up in the overall tax credit issue. But if you give me a day or two, I can reach out to some folks and find out what their plan is on that. It's been my understanding that those tax credit programs, neighborhood assistance, youth opportunity, and violence prevention, those kind of nonprofit tax programs were not really on the block. People are pretty comfortable with those programs. This would be a really bad optics for the administration to slow those kinds of programs down. I mean, especially as we're having discussions about equity and things like that. So let me just find out. I'm kind of hoping I can report back and just say they're being slow.
Thank you.
Ellen, I know that you have a question.
Yeah, David, do you know what, if anything, the legislature is going to do to make it either safe for people to testify and be involved in the process, or allow remote testimony maybe? We're really concerned about the ability of the public to get involved in some of these issues and or being shut out of the discussions because they're afraid to go down to the Capitol.
I'll be honest with you. I think that, I'll always try to be honest with you. I think the legislature is absolutely opposed to coming back for this. I think that this is going to be, unless folks are sitting at a table right now, unless police organizations, the governor's office, social justice organizations are all sitting around a table right now hashing out a deal on this, it's not going to go. There's no way. Because they're not going to shut debate down in the Senate. So, Ellen, they will have to have a way for the public to engage. My guess is they will make the public come to the Capitol. That's my guess. It is a guess. I haven't even asked the question in the House. I mean, we have a lot of good friends across staff in the Senate and the House. They don't know. They don't have a plan. I mean, the idea that government has a plan at the moment is probably pretty far-fetched. And so I can tell you that the last set of hearings on budget, Medicaid, that happened, 2 weeks ago now, people testified in person. But when I talked to my friends that work for the budget chair, they said that they were offering to some of the people who are testifying, if they wanted to do it remotely, they could. And interestingly enough, everybody said no, they wanted to come and do it. And so they put on masks and sat in the chamber and did it. Also, we know that 2 legislative staff people in research have tested positive. We know that the state of Mississippi just changed their flag, 2-3 weeks ago. And the number of COVID positives out of the Mississippi legislature went through the roof right afterwards. But we also know that our legislature came back for 3 weeks and we don't think anybody got sick. And that could have been the worst thing that happened, frankly, because now I think that people think it's, no problem.
David, Rabbi Arno has a question.
Okay. He might be on mute.
He is muted. Rabbi Arno, are you still there? There you go. Go ahead.
I'm here. I didn't know that I had a question.
Oh,
you raised your hand.
I'm sorry, that was an accident.
Okay, so there is a question in the chat, David, about any additional information about PPP forgiveness process. The bank that that Holly and their organization is speaking with says that they aren't accepting applications until the federal government finalizes their requirements. Is there a timeline on that, and will there be another round at all?
So I do not have a timeline on the forgiveness. I do know that the feds put out a second, third, fifth, however many rounds of guidance on this, and talked about the ability to use a 24-week rolling period. If Don's on the call, he knows much more about this than I do, but a 24-week rolling period instead of the 5 weeks. And they also reduced the amount of money that had to be spent on payroll from 75 to 60%, and would allow for partial forgiveness versus full. So there was a bunch of guidance. So I'm a little surprised that that's what the bank's response is. And I would guess that every bank is different in how they're doing this. So maybe we just need to try and get some more information for you. I'm going to take a quick note, but I'm a little surprised that they don't feel like there's guidance on that. Somebody on the call may have already submitted on this and no.
Actually, most of the feedback from Ellen and others, Marion is saying that that they're experiencing the same thing. Although Marion said that their bank told them no forgiveness paperwork needed for PPP loans under 150,000.
That's an interesting statement. I would hold on to all your documentation. That does not feel like a realistic statement to me. I mean, the other thing we know is that the feds are targeting for auditing higher PPP loans. So, you know, if you're a $200,000 recipient of PPP or 300, you know, the chances, and I think you should keep all of your information. You should do everything you're supposed to do. But just keep in mind the chances of the feds coming in and auditing, I mean, there's tens of millions of these loans out there, is pretty low. I don't know if the question was about another round of PPP. There is still money left, and I thought that they extended the current PPP program application period to sometime in early August, but we will check that as well. So I don't know that the feds view the PPP program as something that needs to be extended because the money has not been exhausted yet in that program, but we'll check that for you.
Marion, you had a question?
No, so just to clarify, that was a big maybe, what the banker told me, that there's a possibility that they're considering a bill that would eliminate the need to provide the paperwork if your loan is under 150,000. That's for sure not a definite yet.
That makes a lot more sense. I would not count on that because the optics around basically giving forgiveness without any documentation for the political folks is going to be awfully difficult.
Any other questions, thoughts for David? As always, David, thank you. I feel like I feel bad. You come on to give us an update and then you walk away with a huge list, which is really helpful and exactly why you've been so valuable to us all along. But so thank you.
No problem.
I guess we should just maybe pivot a little bit. David was talking a little bit about direct service and stuff. I don't know. I see that I see Nikki and Miriam. There are a couple of direct service agencies. Anything you guys want to share? Anything you're seeing? Has anything changed on the ground for you and or synagogues or anyone else who's doing any direct service kind of work, whether that's, you know, giving out food or mental health support or whatever it is? Anything anybody wants to share? Anything that we should all be aware of? Miriam has that face like, not really.
I'll share.
Okay, Ellen.
So we're doing our back to school store on Sunday with basically no volunteers, no kids, no parents, no guardians. The whole thing is being done with a contactless drive-through delivery system where we're going to be delivering pre-filled backpacks to 65 agencies to help 2,000 kids. We haven't figured out yet what we're going to do with all the coats and underwear and shoes and clothes and other things that we have for all those kids. But at least we're going to get them what we've needed. And we've had to pivot on that because they're now telling us kids need earbuds and they need computer speakers and they need different tools than they originally needed. And so we're going to be pivoting once more once the schools make their announcements, I think on July 20th. That's kind of been the date we're hearing, to know exactly what it is those kids are going to need in the fall. And we'll probably end up doing a similar kind of distribution in January of similar stuff to restock for the kids, because it looks like a couple of these districts, from what we're hearing, are going to go completely virtual in the fall because the teachers are refusing to go back because of the risk to teaching. So now it's not just the kids they're talking about, but it's the risk to a lot of these teachers. And there's some pretty heavy pushback on that. So more to come on that. But we're just going to keep plugging away and figure out how to get people what they need.
Thanks, Ellen. And pivot is a new word. I feel like we've all become ballerinas, right? We're all pivoting, ballet dancers, pivoting all the time. Anyone else? Nikki, Miriam, anybody else? Anything? Share? Oh yeah, Holly, go ahead. You're muted.
We're beginning to, or I should say we're continuing to do on a very limited basis, small group in-person sessions with our teenagers. Our tradition has been to use different spaces. And so what would be super helpful is, I know we interacted with 9 Network and they had a really clear policy around using their public commons, and that they're not going to allow people to use it, and for good reason, because they're a public entity and so forth. But I didn't know if there was something that this community wanted to put out in terms of small group in-person meetings. I know we will be looking to reach out to some of our longtime partners, many of them houses of worship, and whether that's okay or not. And we really want to respect what everyone is doing, and we want to keep our students safe. We're getting a lot of encouragement from a segment of parents to please do something in person. I need my kid to go and be engaged. And we have a segment of students that are going to remain virtual, which we're okay with, but we would love to have to work with everybody to have a common understanding of what's okay to do and what spaces are okay to use.
Holly, thanks for that. And I think it brings up something that we talked about last week and the week before, and that is that it's clear everybody has different reopening or restart procedures. And somebody on the call a couple weeks ago had asked if we could collect those and put those up. We've only gotten one, but we are happy to, in order for you all to be able to see how other people are approaching this, understand and see if there are any kind of commonalities that might exist. And some of you haven't moved that far yet and want to see others' examples. So if anybody has reopening procedures, we're happy to put them up, post them to a place where everybody that's invited to this call can go and look and download and use them as templates, but also may help answer Holly's question around, where can they potentially go? Who is open to that kind of thing? There is a question in the comment section, Holly, around this. From Ellen, and certainly I don't know if it's a suggestion or a question.
No, it's just a suggestion.
Yeah,
So-
outdoor is tough in August, but we're definitely using outdoor spaces.
Anyway, this is my first summer here, and I will agree with that for sure. Rabbi Rose, did you have something?
Just 2 matters. First, you asked anecdotally about some of the issues associated with food. One of the things that we are seeing is an uptick starting this week, actually. Triple the number of requests for food assistance. I don't know if it's just a blip on the radar screen, but triple the amount of requests this week, maybe in anticipation of the $600 coming to an end. I'm not exactly sure, but we're beginning to see that. The other thing is we have been somewhat inundated relative to the last question about utilization of our very large outdoor spaces. So we are allowing some outdoor gatherings in small groups. For example, there's an Israeli dance group that's been meeting in our pavilion in the evenings when it's a little less hot and humid. But if there are individuals who are looking for outdoor spaces, we will begin to entertain that. Our committee is actually meeting this evening, again, our reopening committee, and that's one of the considerations. So we've been inundated with requests, but if there are others who are interested in utilizing our spaces in the evenings, once our summer camping and early childhood centers are done with their programs, we would be happy to entertain those requests. So Holly, if you want to reach out, we'll be happy to talk with you about that.
Thank you, Rabbi Rose. And it's a good reminder. I think, Mindy, there is a document that we're preparing around food and where food opportunities are. I don't know when that'll be ready, but when it is, we'll push that out to everyone. It lists both within our community resources that are available, right? And is it just in our community? Just all of the, as Nikki and Mindy both, who are right on top of each other on my screen, are both nodding yes at the exact same cadence. We will get that information out to you guys, and obviously Rabbi Rose to the rabbis, as we discussed yesterday as well. Any other thoughts, feedback, things that you're seeing? I saw Miriam just kind of nodding her head around the tick up in the food kind of piece.
That's why I made that face before Rabbi Rose spoke. We saw the same thing last week, but I don't know if it's enough of a pattern to know what it means. But we saw the same increase last week, not back to the sky high levels, but on the uptick. So we'll keep an eye on it and see. I bet it's going back to where it was in anticipation of the July 31st and in running out of the funds that they've been getting. So, but it's not a pattern yet, so it's hard to say.
Sure.
But
yeah,
yes.
Nikki, did you want to add something?
Oh, I was just going to say that I know Lori Cavern-Berry and Federation is putting together a sheet. Maybe you can talk about that, because I think that'll be really helpful for all of us.
Yeah, we are, and it should be done, I don't know, Mindy?
Next week.
So next week on this call, Mindy, I think, right? Are you guys going to talk a little bit about food resources?
We won't have it all prepared by this call, but we should have the information, and we also want to go over we have a plan for reimbursing many of you who are offering food to your constituents. So we want to reiterate what those guidelines are so that you can all access those resources. And we also want to make sure that everyone's aware of the many resources that you can send your membership, your students, your constituents to access different subsidized food resources. So if it's not prepared by this call next Thursday, we'll make sure to send it out as soon as it's ready.
Great, thank you. Anyone else on anything that you don't have to be direct service? I know I started that way, but on anything that you're seeing, patterns, things that you want to bring up to the group, or concerns that you're, any of those kinds of things? All right, I guess let's just open it up. Does anybody have anything they want to share or talk about? I did hear and see something about PPE, and David did mention how there's probably going to be run, and that there may be it may be difficult to access. Do people have stores or stocks for that? Any thoughts around PPE materials? See Rabbi Rose shaking his head like no. Don't have it. I'm not sure. Some synagogues have already indicated that they are or aren't opening for the high holidays. So I know for a period of time that was a big discussion, particularly among synagogues. Do we need to have stuff prepared? It seems like some of you are still in process with that. Do people have what they need, or are there concerns about that? Okay.
Brian, because we're running summer camp and early childhood, we're just burning through this stuff, and we're having a really hard time replenishing, and we might have to close if we can't get the PPE. It's not that we have some money to buy it, but we can't find all the things that we need.
And what are you having trouble with specifically, Rabbi?
Right now, yesterday we were able to find some masks. The one thing that we couldn't find yesterday were gloves.
So
we're running through the masks so quickly.
Yeah, I have a line on some. Will you just unmute for a second and say if masks are an issue? I have a line. There's a donor in the community who has a warehouse full of them and offered some. Are other people concerned or having issues with masks?
Mm-hmm.
Who said that? Ellen?
Yeah, we are. And I don't know if you guys all saw, Rabbi Ravinsky just sent out an email this morning. They have an alum of JSU who has a company that is that has masks available. Rabbi, I'll forward that to you. But the
Thank
other
you.
thing I will tell you, we have opened accounts, and some of you may already have this, with US Foods, who has access to like the gloves and stuff like that. If I can find that for you, I'm happy to facilitate it, because we got them at Restaurant Depot, we got them at US Foods, we've gotten them at other places that are not your typical like medical or janitorial supply places. And so we've been able to get everything we need in that regard. We're just trying to think outside of the box. And then we're also part of a national buying group through the Domestic Violence Network that allowed us to order in bulk as well. And the next time that opens up for ordering, I can certainly reach out and let you all know. And we're happy to order on behalf of other organizations if we need to.
So Ellen, will you do me a favor? Will you make sure to forward those places as well? Scott Biondo, as you guys probably know, was sending out updates of a list he was keeping of places that verified places that you could get some of these materials. I want to make sure that we include those, and we'll resend the list out as well.
Can I also say, Rabbi Rose, if you need like a case, we can give you, we've been storing, not hoarding, but for the pantry, we need them. We have a lot right now. And if we can give you a case to get by for the next month happily. So, okay. So I'll make sure that gets to you. Great.
Anything else? I hear this. We're gonna, I'll touch base with Scott and we'll see what's going on. David, any thoughts or suggestions from your end that you see or know about? Okay, no, you're muted, so, okay. All right. Okay, anybody else have anything? Is it a little bit of an open forum? Anything you want to share or talk about?
I have a question.
Mhm.
For those of you that are open and have people in your building, as we have, are you putting contingency plans in place to go back to remote, given the surge in cases that we're seeing?
We kind of on a weekly basis sort of send some people home and bring them back, and so we're adapting regularly depending on whatever.
And we at the Federation were scheduled to consider opening even broader, and we decided not to. We're staying at our first level of openness, which is essentially, if needed, with permission from a supervisor, at most no more than 25% of people allowed in the office in general. Look, I want to be honest with everyone. We, as a senior management staff, were talking the other day. I don't believe that this is necessarily going to change. Certainly not before the beginning of the year. And we're starting to talk about making plans for Q1 of 2021 and maintaining the level and style of openness and program restrictions that we have now. Certainly nothing that we've decided for sure, but given David's comments and everybody can see what's going on, I really feel like being upfront and making a decision early so that our staff and the community can plan a little more. I believe we're going to be in a restricted environment like this through the beginning of the year at least.
Brian, that reminds me, I don't know if you brought this up earlier. If everybody hasn't set in their reopening or their plans, we'd love to coordinate that repository of information so that whatever you're planning now, whatever you're thinking about, again, for those organizations that don't have a plan or want to see what others are doing to develop best practices. I don't think we've received everybody's, if you have a document, please, and you're comfortable sharing it with us, it'll be shared within this group. I don't think we're going to post that publicly, just as a resource for all of us so that we can say, oh, you know what? Federation's doing this. Wait, but we didn't think, oh my God, Ellen had this really great idea what they're doing. Or, so as much as you're willing to share, the more data we have between us, the better.
Thanks for reiterating. Anyone else? Questions or information to share? Anything? Thank you, guys.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. And keep up the good work. And if you need anything, reach out to us.